You think you live in one universe, one reality where you made specific choices, experienced particular events, ended up reading these exact words at this precise moment. You assume this is the only version of your life that exists, the single timeline that defines who you are. You're completely wrong. Right now, as you read this, there are countless versions of you living completely different lives. In some universes, you never learned to read. In others, you're a Nobel Prize winner. There's a reality where you died yesterday and another where you'll live for centuries. Every possible version of your life is happening simultaneously across an infinite collection of parallel universes. This isn't science fiction. This isn't speculation. This is one of the most serious theories in modern physics, emerging directly from the mathematics of quantum mechanics. And once you understand what it really means, it will shatter everything you think you know about existence, choice, and reality itself. But here's what should terrify you about this idea. If it's true, then nothing you do matters, because every possible thing you could do is already happening somewhere else. Let me show you how we arrived at this impossible conclusion. It starts with something simple, something you've probably heard of but never really understood: the double-slit experiment. It's the experiment that broke physics and led us inexorably toward infinite universes. Take a single electron, one particle, and fire it at two narrow slits cut in a barrier. Common sense says the electron goes through one slit or the other, like a tiny bullet. Put a detector screen behind the slits and you should see the electron hit one spot. But that's not what happens. Fire one electron at a time, and after thousands of electrons you get something impossible: an interference pattern, alternating bands of light and dark, the signature of waves interfering with each other. The single electron somehow went through both slits simultaneously, interfered with itself, and created the pattern of a wave. This should be impossible. A particle can't be in two places at once. But quantum mechanics says it can and must. Before measurement, the electron exists in superposition. It's literally going through both slits at the same time, taking every possible path, existing in all possible states simultaneously. But here's where it gets disturbing. The moment you try to measure which slit the electron goes through, the superposition collapses. The electron chooses one path. The interference pattern disappears. The act of observation forces reality to become definite, to pick one possibility out of many. This is the measurement problem, and it's been tormenting physicists for nearly a century. What exactly counts as measurement? Why does observation collapse the wave function? How does quantum superposition transition to classical reality? When does the possible become actual? For decades, most physicists accepted this mystery with what's called the Copenhagen interpretation. Superposition exists until measurement collapses it into one definite state. Don't ask how or why, just calculate the probabilities and make predictions. It works, so stop asking uncomfortable questions. But some physicists couldn't stop asking. Among them was Hugh Everett III, a graduate student at Princeton in the 1950s, who proposed something radical, something that seemed crazy but was mathematically inevitable. What if the wave function never collapses? What if instead of the electron choosing one slit, the universe splits? One universe where it went through the left slit, another where it went through the right slit. Both possibilities happen. Both are equally real. The measurement doesn't collapse superposition, it divides reality. This is the many worlds interpretation. And once you follow its logic, there's no stopping. Every quantum event, every particle decay, every photon absorption, every molecular collision creates a branching point. Reality continuously splits into multiple versions, each containing a different outcome. And this isn't happening occasionally, it's happening constantly, everywhere, at every instant. Trillions of quantum events per second in your body alone, each one spawning new universes. The multiverse isn't growing, it's exploding into existence at an incomprehensible rate. Think about what this means for you personally. Every decision you make corresponds to quantum events in your brain. Neurons firing or not firing, neurotransmitters binding or not binding, electrical signals propagating or failing to propagate. Each quantum event splits reality. In some universes you decided to read this entire piece. In others you stopped after the first paragraph. There are realities where you never encountered this idea at all, and others where you became obsessed with it and devoted your life to multiverse research. Every possible version of your response to these words is playing out somewhere. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. If infinite universes exist containing every possible outcome, then probability becomes meaningless. Why should you care about making good decisions if versions of you are making every possible decision anyway? Why worry about consequences when all possible consequences are guaranteed to happen somewhere? This is the existential crisis of the multiverse. If everything happens, does anything matter? If all possible lives are being lived, what makes your particular experience special or significant? Some physicists try to escape this conclusion by arguing that only nearby universes matter, the ones that differ from ours by small amounts. But this just pushes the problem back one level. How do you define nearby? Why should distance in the multiverse correspond to relevance for your experience? And there's another disturbing implication that most people don't consider. If infinite universes exist, then not only are all possible good outcomes happening, all possible terrible outcomes are happening too. For every universe where you live a happy life, there are countless universes where you experience unimaginable suffering. Worse yet, if truly infinite universes exist, then the vast majority of conscious beings experience lives that are predominantly suffering, simply because there are more ways for things to go wrong than to go right. The mathematics of infinity suggests that most of your copies across the multiverse are living in hellish realities. But wait, there's more. If the multiverse is infinite, then not only do infinite versions of you exist, perfect copies of you exist, there are universes identical to this one in every detail, down to the quantum level, containing beings who are absolutely identical to you, having precisely this same experience right now. This raises questions that hurt to think about. Which one is the real you? Are you all equally real? When you make a decision, are you actually choosing, or are you just discovering which branch of the multiverse you happen to find yourself in? Some physicists argue that quantum mechanics itself gives us a way out. The universe doesn't split, instead you experience all possibilities with different weightings. When you flip a quantum coin, you don't create two universes. You experience a superposition of both outcomes, with your consciousness somehow sampling from both possibilities. But this doesn't solve the fundamental problem, it just relocates it. Instead of infinite parallel universes, you have one universe where consciousness itself is split, experiencing multiple realities simultaneously. That's not less disturbing, it's more disturbing. Here's another angle that might break your brain further. If the multiverse exists, then somewhere there are universes where physics works differently. Not just universes with different histories, but universes with different laws of nature entirely. Realities where mathematics itself is different, where logic operates by other rules, where consciousness takes forms we can't even imagine. And if truly anything is possible somewhere in the infinite multiverse, then there are universes where beings have figured out how to communicate across the multiverse boundary. There might be versions of you right now trying to send messages to this version of you, desperately attempting to establish contact across the infinite expanse of parallel realities. But perhaps the most disturbing possibility is this. What if the multiverse interpretation is wrong, but for reasons that are even stranger than the theory itself? What if there's only one universe, but reality is even weirder than we imagined? What if consciousness creates reality, not by observing it, but by dreaming it into existence, moment by moment? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest exactly this. Reality doesn't exist until it's experienced. The entire universe is a kind of collective dream, with consciousness serving as the dreamer. In this view, there's no multiverse, because there's no objective reality at all, just subjective experience creating the illusion of an external world. This might sound comforting compared to infinite universes, but it's actually more terrifying. At least in the multiverse, other versions of you are real, even if you can't access them. But if reality is purely experiential, then everyone you've ever loved, every relationship you've ever had, every moment of connection with another being, all of it might be elaborate constructions of your own consciousness. You might be the only real thing in existence, trapped in an infinite dream of your own making, forever unable to encounter genuine otherness, genuine love, genuine connection. The multiverse at least promises that your loved ones exist somewhere, in some form. Pure idealism offers no such comfort. But let's dig deeper into the mathematics that led us here. The Schrödinger equation, the fundamental equation of quantum mechanics, describes how quantum states evolve over time. It's completely deterministic given the initial conditions. You can calculate exactly how the wave function will develop. There's no randomness in the equation itself. The randomness only appears when we try to interpret what the wave function means in terms of observable reality. In the standard interpretation, measurement causes random collapse to one of many possibilities. But Everett realized this randomness is artificial. If you take the Schrödinger equation seriously, if you don't add extra assumptions about collapse, then all possibilities remain real. They just become separated from each other. Think about what this means for the nature of time. In the multiverse, the future isn't uncertain. All possible futures exist. When you worry about what will happen tomorrow, you're not concerned about uncertainty. You're concerned about which branch of reality your consciousness will find itself experiencing. This creates a bizarre relationship with probability. When you flip a coin, the multiverse interpretation says both heads and tails occur. From outside the multiverse, looking at all branches, there's no probability involved. Everything happens. But from inside any single branch, you experience apparent randomness because you only have access to one outcome. So probability isn't about what will happen, it's about measure, about how much weight different outcomes have in the overall structure of reality. Some branches of the multiverse are thicker, more likely to be experienced, while others are thinner. But all are equally real. This leads to something called the quantum suicide paradox. Imagine a device that kills you if a quantum coin lands heads, lets you live if it lands tails. In the standard interpretation, you have a 50% chance of surviving. But in the multiverse interpretation, there will always be a branch where you survive, no matter how many times you activate the device. From your subjective perspective, you would experience seemingly miraculous survival again and again, as you only experience the branches where you remain conscious. Meanwhile, other versions of your friends and family would experience branches where you die. The implications are deeply disturbing. But here's an even stranger consideration. If the multiverse interpretation is correct, then you've already survived countless near-death experiences without realizing it. Every time a cosmic ray could have triggered a fatal mutation in your DNA, every time you narrowly avoided an accident, every time your heart could have stopped in many universes. These things did happen. You're only conscious of the branches where you survived. This suggests that from your subjective perspective, you might be effectively immortal. There will always be some branch, however improbable, where you continue to exist. You might find yourself living far longer than should be statistically possible, as you experience only the vanishingly small fraction of realities where aging, disease, and accidents somehow fail to kill you. But immortality in the multiverse would be far from pleasant. As you age beyond normal human limits, the branches where you survive would become increasingly bizarre. Perhaps you survive through experimental medical procedures, or by being uploaded to computers, or through alien intervention. The price of multiverse immortality might be experiencing increasingly strange and potentially horrifying forms of existence. And there's another disturbing aspect. If infinite universes exist, then there are realities where you discover this theory is true. Realities where you develop the technology to communicate across branches, and realities where you make contact with other versions of yourself. Imagine receiving a message from another version of you, one who made different choices, lived a different life, but shares your memories up to some branching point. How would you respond? What would you say to a version of yourself who chose the career you abandoned, married the person you didn't, lived in the place you left behind? The conversation would be deeply intimate yet profoundly alien. This other you would share your deepest memories, your formative experiences, your core identity, but would have become someone entirely different through the accumulation of different choices and experiences. And if communication between branches were possible, it would raise ethical questions that have no precedent. Do you have obligations to other versions of yourself? If you could warn them about mistakes you made, should you? If you could learn from their successes, would that be cheating somehow? Would it violate some principle of independence between parallel realities? But perhaps most disturbing of all is the implication for meaning and purpose. If every possible version of your life is being lived somewhere, what does it mean to try to live a good life? If there are versions of you that become saints and versions that become monsters, versions that achieve great things and versions that accomplish nothing, what makes your particular path through reality special or significant? Some argue that this is liberating. You don't need to worry about making perfect choices because all choices are made somewhere. But it's equally valid to argue that this makes everything meaningless. If all possible stories are told, why does your particular story matter? The multiverse might resolve certain paradoxes in quantum mechanics, but it creates new paradoxes in meaning, identity, and existence. We traded one mystery for many mysteries, and it's not clear we gained more than we lost. Yet here's what's remarkable about this theory. It emerges naturally from taking quantum mechanics seriously without adding extra assumptions. The mathematics points toward infinite parallel realities. Whether we're comfortable with the implications or not, reality doesn't care about our preferences for meaning, simplicity, or comprehensibility. And perhaps that's the most profound lesson of the multiverse theory. The universe, or multiverse, is under no obligation to make sense to creatures who evolved to hunt gazelles on African savannas. Our intuitions about identity, causation, probability, and meaning might simply be inadequate for understanding reality at its deepest level. The question isn't whether the multiverse seems reasonable or comfortable. The question is whether it's true. And if it is true, then this conscious experience reading these words are just one facet of an infinite jewel, one note in an endless symphony, one story in a library, that contains every possible story that could ever be told. But let's return to the multiverse and consider one more disturbing possibility. What if accessing other universes is theoretically possible but practically guaranteed to destroy you? What if consciousness is so finely tuned to one specific reality that any attempt to perceive parallel universes would shatter the delicate structure of your awareness? There might be methods, exotic physics, advanced technology, altered states of consciousness that could allow glimpses into parallel realities. But using them might be like trying to see ultraviolet light by surgically replacing your eyes with different organs. Technically possible, but the process would destroy the very thing trying to perceive. Maybe that's why we feel so isolated in our single universe. Not because other realities don't exist, but because accessing them requires giving up everything that makes you you. The price of seeing the multiverse might be losing your place in any universe at all. Here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this. If the multiverse is real, then somewhere there's a version of you that understands it completely. Not just intellectually, but viscerally, directly, with the same certainty you have about your own existence. That version of you has solved the measurement problem, comprehended infinity, and made peace with living in just one slice of infinite reality. But you're not that version, you're this version. The one struggling to understand, the one disturbed by implications you can barely grasp, the one who may never achieve that perfect comprehension. And that might be the cruelest joke of all, knowing that understanding is possible somewhere, but remaining forever separated from it by the impermeable barrier between parallel worlds. The multiverse theory emerged from trying to understand quantum mechanics without invoking mysterious wave function collapse. But instead of solving the mystery, it multiplied it infinitely. We traded one impossible thing, quantum superposition, for something even more impossible, infinite coexisting realities, where every possibility is actualized. Maybe that's the deepest truth about existence. Reality is so strange, so fundamentally bizarre, that any theory that truly explains it will sound impossible to minds that evolved to navigate a single classical world. The multiverse might be true not despite seeming insane, but because reality itself is stranger than sanity can accommodate. And you, this version of you reading these words right now, are living inside that impossibility, whether you can fully comprehend it or not. You're one conscious moment in an infinite symphony of parallel experiences, all equally real, all equally impossible, all equally you.